Hello and welcome to the Half Court Press podcast. I'm Jimmy Watkins. He's Joel Lorenzi. He's wearing glasses. Are you usually wearing glasses?
No.
Okay.
I'm watching film as we do this.
He's watching film as we go. Dedicated. I'm also wearing glasses. I'm wearing glasses backwards. Mine are not real. Mine are blue light. I basically go through a pair of blue light glasses once every 3 months. I tend to lose them, as I do most things. And then I just say, I don't really need them. Then my eyes start hurting like they did earlier last week, and I go back to Walmart and drop another $15 on it. We are going to do basically exactly the same thing that we did last week with the Big Ten, going through all the returners and those who left and the key additions. But this time we're going to do it with the Big East, and we are going to ask two simple questions at the end of each little pod here. There are fewer Big East teams, so it shouldn't take as long. Is this team better, worse, the same? And are they a threat to Creighton, who I think we all just sort of generally accept is the Big East favorite this season?
Yeah.
Joel did a great job putting the stock together. I did a great job mucking it up by adding my own notes to it that make sense probably only to me. But we're going to power through, and we are going to start with Providence, who finished 27-6 last year, 14-3 in the conference. That's their best record and finish since 96-97. They lost their leading scorer, their second leading scorer, which would be Al Durham and Nate Watson. Justin Minaya started 25 games. Noah Horchler was their fourth leading scorer. A.J. Reef started 25 games and their fifth leading scorer. They lost a lot. That's what we're saying here. Jared Bynum, sixth man, the third leading scorer, he's back. I think the offense is probably going to run through him this year. They also brought in a four-star guard named Jaden Pierre, Bryce Hawkins, a transfer from Kentucky, Devin Carter, a transfer from South Carolina, and now Noah Locke, a transfer from Louisville. Joel, better, worse, the same, and are they a threat to Creighton?
I think they're worse, but they're also still a good team. I think they're still like a top 50 team, definitely top like 40 to 50 range, I think. And they could peak higher. I mean, that's just the course of the college basketball season. But I think when you lose a guy like Al Durham, to me, he was a great first option, especially on a team like this. Maybe not a blue blood first option, but on a team where they probably peaked in terms of expectations for as long as I've been watching college basketball. I mean, this was the best I'd seen Providence ever. And Al Durham just felt like such a fitting first option. I mean, he was so clean, navigating screens, getting to his spots, snake dribbles, mid-range, like just all the stuff you'd ask for in a guy who's really savvy on offense. And then Nate Watson was just like that bully-type role man to just give you more actions. And so they had a good dynamic going. So to lose that and now have Jared Bynum as probably, like you said, a guy who's going to get the keys. I mean, I like Jared Bynum. Granted, he's undersized.
5'10".
Yeah, but he's crafty. He's good at what he does, right? And he extended his range. I mean, he was hitting some crazy shots last year. But at the same time, I also think their losses plus Jared Bynum possibly being their first option, I think it definitely lowers their ceiling to me. I'd have to see how Jared Bynum progresses, but he's also pretty old as it stands, and I just don't know how much higher that ceiling can go for him.
Yeah, I think we know what Jared Bynum is, and generally when you give someone more responsibility, their efficiency doesn't increase, especially a dude who's 5'10". He's going to have to work really hard. He's got a crafty game. He's got all the moves that he needs to get shots off and score at the rim for a dude his size. And he's got some good vision. I think he averaged 4 assists per game last year, even as like the energizer bench guy. But I just think you're sort of retooling everything else around him. Like the point you made about Watson being a great role man. That's hard. Like it's hard to replace that kind of chemistry, right? Yeah. A guy like Bryce Hopkins, you look at him. Oh, came from Kentucky, from a 4-star guy. That's exciting. He's not the typical. Like he's not jumping out the gym.
Yeah.
He's not the flashiest player.
It was a good recruit to land, though, I'd say. I mean,
sure.
for Providence to come off, I think the year Providence had is what helped land a guy like that. But also, like you're kind of saying, it's not the surface level former 4-star. He was a high 4-star at that. Yeah. Obviously, he went to UK. So
right.
You're right. It's not the surface level 4-star you would think. But it's a good trend for this team, I think, for you to lose all you lost and they're still really competitive.
That's the biggest test for a team that has a big year like that is, okay, what do you do now? Is that going to become an aberration, or is that going to become the standard? You're not going to be able to get back there right away, but can you build toward that? Can you maintain, can you mitigate the losses you have? One more quick note on the new guys they have. Two more quick notes, I'll say. Devin Carter, extremely cool hair. Kind of looks like Corbin Blue back in the day. Has like the bouncy curls. His hair is longer than Corbin Blue was. Do you know who Corbin Blue is?
Of course, come on.
I was just asking.
We're not that different in age. Come on
Not
now.
everyone watched High School Musical.
I didn't, but it was hard to
Okay.
not know who that
Okay.
was, like growing up.
Devin Carter has cool hair. Jumper needs work, but very cool hair. Noah Locke, that dude, just watching some highlights of him, that dude takes crazy shots. There was one where he does the thing that Alonzo Verge liked to do last year, where he does it's sort of Dirkish. Luka Doncic has sort of popularized it now as like a step back 1-footer.
1-footer, yeah.
He's taken those. Noah Locke took one of those from like 20 feet last year. It's awesome, and he's a guy. He'll take a handoff, no dribbles. I'm going up with it right now. He's gonna be. I think Providence is going to have some wide swings from their offense. They're gonna be games where they look really good, games where they look not so hot because some of the shots they take are gonna be questionable. But I think a fun team. I agree with you. Not a threat to Creighton. Probably still a tournament team though. Next up, Villanova, 30-8, 16-4 in conference a year ago. Won the Big East tournament title. Beat Creighton to do so. Advanced to the Final Four. Ran into some injuries there. Justin Moore tore his Achilles. He tore his Achilles during the Elite Eight game. Is that right?
It was a long tournament run for sure. Yeah.
So we're probably still not going to see him. If we do, it'd be at the very, 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 very end of the season.
Yeah.
Colin Gillespie, the table setter and the table clearer, the
Mr.
closer.
Robot.
He was the guy that they put the ball in their hands the ball in his hands when they needed something to happen. He's gone. Jermaine Samuels, Brian Antoine, a former highly touted recruit. Oh, and Jay Wright, one of the best college basketball coaches that we have seen, is also gone. Kyle Neptune spent 8 seasons as Wright's assistant, so you would imagine not a ton's going to change. They managed to keep most of the rest of the core intact. Eric Dixon, Brandon Slater, Caleb Daniels, Chris Archidiacono, Justin Moore, who again has the Achilles, are all back. Couple of top 60 recruits in Cam Whitmore and Mark Armstrong. Joel Betterworth the same, and are they a threat to Creighton?
Definitely worse. Justin Moore is a big hit, but honestly, I don't. How would I phrase this? I don't feel like they could drop off too far. Like, I would have to see them drop off far because it's still Villanova, right? Like, you still got, like you said, Kyle Neptune has been in the fold for a while. I would have to see this thing plummet in action before I'm like, okay, yeah, like it's on the downhill. I still think they'll be pretty close to the same program they were. And I think, like, I know you're not big on freshmen and all that.
You're painting a narrative here. I just don't think that you want a true freshman to be your guy.
Well, look.
And Cam Whitmore maybe in that situation
Cam Whitmore's
this year.
Game, and it's crazy because this is the type
He got
of program.
crazy bounce, by the way. My goodness.
He's insanely bouncy. And the thing with Cam Whitmore, like, I know programs like Nova and UNC, they'll take a 5-star and turn him into a 3-4 year player, whatever, longer than a freshman. But Cam Whitmore, I honestly think he could have a year where, even though regardless, I think he's leaving, I think he can have a year there, even in their system, to where he's going to be a top 10 pick. I mean, most people project him top 5. So Cam Whitmore, like you said, super explosive. And he has the kind of game where maybe this team isn't going to hand him the keys, right? But he's just going to get his buckets within the offense and flow within it and, spot up and take people off closeouts. And he's going to get to that rim regardless. And when he's there, I mean, it's going to get scary. And then Mark Armstrong.
I like him too, by the way.
Yeah, and Mark Armstrong is a real, like, East Coast guard, not terrible sized. And he got a little bounce to him too. Like, I'm watching him, like, he's just, like, we talk about crafty guard. Like, I like him with the handle and just fitting into spaces he shouldn't be.
The opportunity is going to be there for somebody to take an outsized role as a primary creator, and Whitmore's the one that jumps off the page to me. I'm with you. I know Jay Wright is gone, and I do think that this program will feel the brunt of that loss. at some point, but it takes a while.
Yeah.
Most of the infrastructure that he's built still lives on through these players and through Kyle Neptune. The talent's still there. Most of these guys are guys that he brought in, right? So if Villanova does fall off, I don't know if Villanova does fall off, or whether the program remains at its peak that it was at with Jay Wright. I don't know that we know the answer to that question right now. It's going to take a couple years.
No doubt. And honestly, like, their losses hurt too, right? Like, Colin Gillespie was a robot. Like, that's a closer if I've ever seen one.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's a hard dude to replace. We talk about dudes that's hard to replace. And then Jermaine Samuels was like the perfect, like, just forward to have on your team, like on a winning team. Like, that's probably your starting forward, and that's anywhere. So obviously those are guys that are hard to replace. But, and I hate to be the one to use the word culture, but it's just, it feels like Nova,
It's true.
right?
It's true.
Like, that culture is just, it's hard to see them being super worse. Like, I can't see a big drop off at all.
Are they a threat to Creighton?
I think in,
Because if they're not, I don't know who is.
I think,
I'll be honest with you.
I think in the Big East schedule they are. I think they can maybe win a game, maybe both. Maybe they find a way to win both. I don't know. But in terms of Big East tournament or like tournament-wise,
To win the conference.
I don't think so. I would say no because
Okay.
Creighton's probably my favorite right now.
Okay.
So
There's some pop here. Like, I don't know that Creighton has a guy besides maybe Kaluma, but even then, a different level of pop with Cam Whitmore. Different
doubt.
level of quickness and burst. So that'd be interesting to see what happens when they match up.
Yeah.
Next up, UConn. 23-10 a year ago overall, 13-6 in the conference. Got bounced in the first round of the NCAA tournament. We are saying goodbye to R.J. Cole, Tyrese Martin, Rishul Dontz, Isaiah Wiley, Tyler Polegans, Jalen Gaffney, and we're bringing back Jordan Hawkins, Adama Sanogo. That's the guy who is going to command most of the touches this year. Andre Jackson and Samson Johnson. Andre Jackson and Jordan Hawkins, two formerly highly rated recruits who I think are going to step up into the vacated roles of R.J. Cole and Tyrese Martin. They added Donovan Clingan, a number 51 overall player in his class, a 7'1" center. These rankings all come from ESPN. We did 247 for the Big Ten because I did that document. Joel did this one. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Hassan Diarra, a guard from Texas A&M. He's a transfer. Naheem Alain from Virginia Tech. He's a shooter. Tristan Newton from East Carolina is sort of I guess he's more of your traditional point guard. Jumper needs a little bit of work. What do you think of UConn? Better, worse, the same? Can they threaten Creighton?
this is another team where their losses are huge, but I still think they're a top 25-ish team. I mean, you got a guy like Sanogo, like that's like a centerpiece on most teams. I mean, he's a force. And
Almost went to Nebraska back in the day.
well, anyway, and Jordan Hawkins is I think that's a guy people see making a bigger jump. He's still like a secondary creator type, so it would take a big jump for him to maybe become your primary option. But like, dude, like R.J. Cole was like a really good point guard, and Tyrese Martin was a great first option, second option at times. So it's like you lose guys like that, you're really depending on either running a lot through Sanogo or hoping that Jordan Hawkins makes a big enough jump to where they're like level options within the offense. And then Andre Jackson is like a good returner, great athlete, but like their losses are like hard to overcome. But I will say, with the guys they brought in, I always liked Hassan Diarra, even if he didn't do a ton at Texas A&M. I thought coming out of high school,
6'2", like 200 pounds.
I always liked his shift and how he got to his buckets. Donovan Clingan is a good guy to, like, you're going to see all over the country how well, because this is the year of the bigs. I mean, you're seeing it in real time. Like, you're going to watch how programs try to relieve their star big men. I think it's going to be a big thing with Creighton and Kalkbrenner. It's going to be a big thing anywhere. I mean, with Sheboy and the Baycots of the world. Like, Sanogo, for him to have as much goal as they want him to have, like, they're going to need someone to back him up. And Clingan, I think, is the guy for them for the future. But he's going to be very important for them to back up Sanogo this year.
Particularly with as much as going to be on Sanogo's plate, him as being the primary help guy. They ask him to switch sometimes. And, of course, they were dumping the ball off to him a decent amount last year. That's only going to go up this year. That's important to have a guy in place who can help him out. And God forbid if he gets in foul trouble, you want a capable guy behind him. I don't know if they have enough juice on the perimeter to be 23 wins good again. Then again, I'm going through the Big East, and I'll maybe tease a little bit of what we got coming up. It seems like I think at the end of just based on the talent in, talent out transaction, I feel like most of these teams took a step back.
Yeah.
So someone is going to rise up from, Creighton we all think is going to take even a bigger jump this year than they did the last year, right? Someone is going to be, maybe it's all bunched up, but I do think someone is going to take and eat up a bunch of those wins that are out there to be had. Yeah. So maybe UConn could be that kind of team because Sonogo is sort of a different differentiator in this conference. There's not a ton of other bigs in this league that are going to play through the big the same way UConn does. So it's you got that sort of a curveball in the conference. Teams are going to have to prepare for this team a little bit differently than they prepare for other teams. It's interesting. This is an interesting team.
And I think to your point, like as much as we've seen a lot of these teams lose like the top half of their core, like their first or second options or whatever it may be, I think what makes people so excited about the Big East this year, whether you're a national guy or you're just a Big East fan, like they really reached into the portal, and it felt like every time you looked up, whether that's Rothstein tweeting or Goodman tweeting, like it was somebody going to the Big East. And I think you'll find some gold in some of these mid-major guys, and then I think you'll find some jumps maybe from some of the high-major guys that are just looking for a fresh start. And I think UConn has an interesting transfer in Tristan Newton, Hassan Diarra, like I mentioned. And frankly, I think you'll see that some of these teams, despite losing like good chunks of their core, like good, dependable players, I think you'll see that they'll kind of revert or hover along close to the level they were. Maybe not Providence, but like UConn, like we've said, like I think UConn can eat a lot of those wins, like you said, because of that.
We got an interesting backcourt situation here with Hawkins, Jackson, Diarra, and Newton. I guess lean to it to a certain extent too. I think they'll probably play three guards a decent amount of the time. Who would you think gets the lion's share of those first two guard spot minutes, assuming we're going traditional 1-2? Would you go Jackson, out of the combination of four, Jackson, Hawkins, Diarra, and Newton? Who's getting most of those minutes, you think?
I'd have to see how much they trust Newton, but based on his numbers at East Carolina, let's say he goes from 18 points per game to 12 points per game. Like, that's a starter to me.
Yeah, and he's a good distributor. I think that's all they really need him to do.
Yeah, and I think you play him next to Hawkins, because I think even if Hawkins doesn't make that jump, like he's like becomes like a guy where you can run him through pick and rolls constantly and stuff, he doesn't. If Newton's a good enough facilitator, I don't think Hawkins has to make that jump. I just think he can just be a better secondary creator and improve upon what he did last year in terms of just attacking closeouts, slamming on dudes, getting to the rim, spotting up from three and one dribble pull-ups, that type of stuff.
You can count on Aline just spotting up around all this. Whatever action they're running, it's nice to have a shooter that you can tuck anywhere around the arc as well. Moving on to Seton Hall, 21-11 overall, 11-8 in conference last year. They were a first-round exit in the NCAA tournament. Gone are Bryce Aiken, Miles Kay, Ike Obiagu, and Jared Roden, who was their leading scorer. Obiagu also was a big-time shot blocker, I think 3.2 blocks per game. So that's tough loss. Key returners, Kadari Richmond, their point guard last year, Alexis Yetna, Jameer Harris, Trey Jackson, Tyrese Samuel, basically most of the core outside of the top three scorers. And then in terms of the additions, Alamir Dawes, the transfer from Clemson, Jaquan Harris, three-star guard, Deontay Davis, three-star freshman guard, Casey Ndefo, who was basically the default center for St. Peter's during that tournament
Casey
run.
Ndefo. I really like him.
Shaheen Holloway is the new coach here. We should mention the coach of St. Pete's, who made the big tournament Cinderella run last year.
Yep.
Casey Ndefo, a fascinating guy that we'll get to. Dre Davis, transfer from Louisville, Femi Odekale, a transfer from Pitt, and Tay Davis, a three-star guy from Indy. This is an interesting team, man.
Yeah.
Seton Hall, better, worse, the same? Are they? I think we both said no on UConn. Are they a threat? Seton Hall, are they a threat? And are they better, worse, or the same?
I don't know where I want.
It's hard to figure.
I don't know what I want to say about Seton Hall. Honestly, they gotta. I mean, the whole team like shifted almost from under them. Well, they kept much of their core, right? But it's like a lot of the additions they had, like it's like they're going in a whole new direction around the core that they had. And granted, like Shaheen Holloway, I think is good. Like I saw this up close. Like he's good. You give him a good group of guards, and he'll run great stuff to get them the looks, corresponding to their skill set. And then, like you said, Casey and Defo was their default big. I mean, they had another big man.
He's 6'7", by the way. That's why he's the default big.
Right.
It's not what you would expect to see out of a big man.
And what's crazy is they got a few guys. Like you lose Ike Obiagu, like that's a 7'2" guy that's blocking shots. And now you look around the roster, and it's a lot of guys, maybe not a lot, but it's a handful of guys like Ndefo who are, bigger forwards. Or
Trey Davis is that same kind of guy, like defense first, hustle points, steals and scraps kind of guy.
Yeah, Trey Jackson, Tyree Samuel, Alex Yetna. Like these are bigger forwards, right? And there's no real big. So I think it'll be interesting to see what Shaheen does. I think at their peak they can be
they'd want to run, right?
Yeah, and at their peak, I think they could be a really switchy team if that's what they're looking forward to. But it's a real like guard laden team too. I mean, a lot of them are like
they got size in the backcourt. Odekala is 6'6".
Yeah.
Some of the younger kids, like the 3-star kid is 6'6". Deontay Davis, they got some size.
Yeah.
And Dre Davis 6'5".
Yeah.
He's kind of a forward, but.
And I like the core they kept. I like Kadari Richmond, Yetna, Harris. Trey Jackson is a very good athlete. Tyree Samuel. This is a good core to keep. I was actually surprised they kept so much in this time of turnover.
Impressive, especially when their former head coach took a pretty good job at Maryland and probably gave him a pretty hard pitch.
Yeah, so it's hard to gauge. Like it really depends on their add-ons for me. And they got so many that are like similar mode, like 3-star freshman combo guards or like 2 guards or like that are undersized, like stuff like that. I think Alamir Dawes probably
Huge
makes a difference for them. Yeah.
Huge swing piece. That's the kid. His highlight film is basically all step back threes.
Yeah.
Which I love. I love that. I love the audacity of that shot selection. I love him as a shot maker. It's just hard to live like that, man.
No doubt.
Like he was shooting really high percentage on those shots last year, and he can miss. He can, if he shoot, I think he shot like 43% on threes last year, and at one point he was up at 48%, just blistering hot on these shots. If that's 37%, you're still a good 3-point shooter, but a lot of instead of scoring 11 points per game, you might be scoring 7 or 8. So it's kind of a crapshoot with this team. And then Femi Odekale is a guy like the size, like some of the skills. The jumper is awkward looking, that limits what you can do. I think at the end of the day, I'm thinking it's pretty similar to what they were last year. It could be a good defense. Offense might depend on the day, and just because you don't have that,
I think you're kind of betting on Shaheen to make something out of this team.
Yes, and because you don't have the continuity that they had last year, all this new stuff that you're running, new guys that you're running it with, new roles for different guys.
Yeah.
They'd probably take a slight step back, I would guess.
And it might take a while, but I think this team can peak at the right time. I mean,
sure.
A Shaheen team has done that as recently as in the past 12 months.
True.
So I'm betting on Shaheen, man. I like them. I think they might. It's hard for me to say they'll be better than last year, but I think out of all these teams, what I'm saying, they'll hover around close to where they were. I think this team might be the closest to where they were last year.
Okay. Next up is Marquette, 19-13 a year ago, 11-8 in Big East play, first round bounce. Lost a lot. Justin Lewis and Daryl Morcell, their top 2 scorers. Greg Elliott and Kirk Quath, Quath is the starting big men. Greg Elliott, rotation guy. Returners, Tyler Kolek, Olivier Maxence Prosper. How well do you think I did there, Joel? It's definitely Olivier.
Yeah, definitely.
And then Oso Iguodaro, rotation guy last year. Additions, this is a team that surprised me in that didn't go super hard in the transfer portal. They kind of want to rebuild it organically. They grabbed Ben Gold, a kid from New Zealand, who is an NBA Academy guy. Sean Jones, Player of the Year in Ohio last year. Jonah Lucas, Chase Ross, Caleb Kozinski's a walk-on, and then the guy that stands out as a grab from the portal is Zach Wright still, who was the NAIA Player of the Year last year. Graduate transfer, has 1 year of eligibility. Not much of a shooter, but it has some impressive pop. Quick, gets up there. Not sure what role he plays on an offense in the Big East. He's a little undersized. Like I said, not much of a shooter. This team I could see taking a step back. I think this team needs this year to maybe regroup. They already have a four-star in the class next year, but they just need some more oomph. Need some more shot creation. Need some more scoring ability. I think this team could take a step back. Joel.
Man, I think out of all the teams we're talking about, I think Marquette might take the biggest step back.
Very possible.
Marquette was a very solid team last year. At their best, was like a top 20-ish team. And I remember being at Hinkle when they came to Indy and just watching Justin Lewis. And I think he had 30 that day. And honestly, I think Butler won the game. They upset Marquette. But the shots Justin Lewis was hitting was like they should have won that game almost. And even down to the last buzzer, I'm like, yo, he's shooting this stuff? Like that was a guy like 6'7", 6'8", like crazy bag. Like I loved his game. You lose a first option like that, like it's downhill.
And the number 2 then.
Yeah, it's downhill.
I don't like who's going to be the number 1 option on this team. I don't know.
You know, and I like Tyler Kolek on a team that's already established as your point guard. Yeah. Like I think that's where he did best last year, but giving him the keys to possibly be like a first or second option on his team. I mean, you're looking at a very down year. I don't know how much they're going to ask him to do this year. And then it's not just Justin Lewis, right? Like you mentioned, like Daryl Morcell was a very pivotal player for them. You lose Greg Elliott, that's 7 points per game. Kurt Quake was their starting big man. Like they lost a lot, and from what they gained, I mean they brought in like 5 freshmen, and like one of them is like a walk on. So I mean, probably they definitely did the worst in the portal. I'd say. I mean they had probably the worst off season, and it's gonna show. I mean I don't really have any stock in this team.
Maybe. The theory behind going hard at the high school level and skipping on the portal, or if you miss out the portal, this is how you spin it to your fan base. Is maybe we're worse this year, but in 3 years, Ben Gold, Sean Jones, maybe that's your core, right?
Yeah.
I don't know about next year though. Moving on, Xavier, 23-13, 8-11 in Big East play. The NIT champs. Respect that banner. Key losses, Paul Scruggs, Nate Johnson, both of whom averaged double digits last year. Dwan Odom transferred to Georgia State. Key returners, Jack Nunn's the leading scorer. Colby Jones, Zach Fremantle, Adam Kunkel, Jerome Hunter, and Sean Miller is back in college basketball, checking his phones for wiretaps.
In the doc, this man wrote Sean Miller, baby.
BAYBEE, all caps. He's back. Where it all started, he's already got a better recruiting class than Xavier has business bringing in. NCAA investigators, arm your phone lines. Cam Crafts, 6'4" off guard, number 58 player in the ESPN 2022 class. Desmond Claude, a 6'5" guard and a number 93 player in the ESPN class. They also brought in Soli Boom, a grad transfer from UTEP, averaged about 20 a game at UTEP. Heavy jump shooter guy. Didn't get to the rim much at UTEP, and there's not a ton of spacing around him here. We'll see how that flushes itself out. Are they better, worse, or the same? And are they a threat to Creighton?
But they were 23-13.
I think
this team hovers around where it was last year. In terms of ads, Cam Kraft is a really good recruit to me. Like that's a dude. Like I watched him play Mean Streets in Chicago. Like he really popped to me. So that's a guy for their future. It's going to be really impactful. Desmond Claude, I know a lot of people like him too. And Sully Boom, like that's like his numbers like pop. Like he was like a 20 point per game scorer. And I don't care where you played, if you average 20 like that, even if you cut that in half, which is like the floor to me for a 20 points per game scorer, is cutting that in half. That's still 10 points per game.
It's just to me the concern to me that I've had multiple assistants in college basketball basically tell me that there's 3 kinds of transfers. You got guys who transfer down, guys who are at the same level, and guys who are coming up. And the guys who are coming up are always the riskiest guys because the level of competition, the size, the athleticism, the coaching, the resources that are being poured in the program, everything's better now. So if you're recruiting that guy to play the same role, even if it's not the same production, I don't care if he scores 20 a game. I don't care how he scores. Is he going to score efficiently? Can he get to the rim? He didn't do that at UTEP, so why would he do that at this level? That's my question about Boone. But they got a lot of guys around. I think if you put this team that they have now in the Big East last year, they might take a slight step back. But again, there's a vacuum here. There's an absence of talent. It's a worse league this year than it was last year.
Yeah, I think
there's some wins for Xavier. I think I like Xavier take a little bit of a step forward and make the tourney this year.
I agree. I think there's an influx. I think I'm trying to put this into
There's
words.
a youth
what we keep
movement coming
describing.
in here. Yeah,
There's like an influx of mid-level impact players.
Sure.
But there's a downfall of the guys who you could point to and say this is the first
top of the
option.
pack
This
guys.
is the second option. But Jack Nuns for this team, I mean, they kept a lot of their core, which I like too.
Hard to do amid a coaching change, but when you're hiring Sean Miller, baby, a little easier.
Yeah. And Jack Nuns, for what it's worth, like you'll see bigs in this league and across the country that'll dominate and be a team's first option and still not stretch the floor. And I mean, he was like a 37% shooter from deep last year, which just the gravity alone means everything.
Extremely
for a
valuable
team.
piece.
Yeah, for a team like this and with ads like Sully Boom and Cam Craft, just to give them space. I mean, I like their outlook and the core they kept in their ads. I might have to agree with you.
For example, if Adama Sanogo or Kalkbrenner end up getting matched up with Nunge, that's a guy who can pull Kalkbrenner away from the rim or Sanogo away from the rim, and just it does so much for your guards.
No doubt.
Speaking of guards, St. John's got a bunch of those guys. 17 and 15 last year, 8 and 11 in the Big East. It's about time for Mike Anderson to start doing something.
Yeah.
Because the last two coaches at St. John's were fired after 4 years in Chris Mullen's case and in 5 years in Steve Lavin's case. This is year 4 for Mike Anderson. Both Chris Mullen made the first 4 at least. He still got canned after 4 years. Steve Lavin made the tournament, and in his second year, I believe, he got canned after 5 years. Mike Anderson has done neither of those things. But the good news is, I think this is one of the more talented teams, if not the most talented team he's had since he's been there. Key losses: Julian Champagne, the leading scorer. I love his name. I love saying it like that. Aaron Wheeler, double-digit scorer. He went to the draft. Another guy who's just like, hey, man, you probably didn't need to go. Didn't get drafted. Tariq Coburn, Steph Smith, returners. They return 8 scholarship guys. Posh Alexander is the second leading scorer on the team from last year. And their top assist guy, Dylan Adewusu, was the second leading assist guy and a 38% three-point shooter. Joel Soriano, the starting center. Isaiah Nui from Omaha Northwest. And former freshman Omar Stanley and Raphael Pinton entering their second year. Additions: A.J. Storr is a freshman from IMG, 6'6" guard, top 100 guy. Andre Curbelo, who the Big Ten listeners of the pod know very well, transfer from Illinois. David Jones, transfer from DePaul, is an interesting player. We'll get to him. Joel, better, worse, or the same, and are they a threat to Creighton?
Better.
Agreed.
I will say, if they were like a 50-ish team last year, they're like a top 40-ish team this year. I think you'll see a lot of teams in the Big East in that range of like 25 to like 45 of just teams that are probably good enough to make the tournament, but not necessarily good enough for long enough that they're constantly in the top 25. I think you'll see teams peak in the top 25. But anyway, I think the talent's definitely there, right? But the fit is a little weird, I'll say.
Interesting.
It's interesting because Curbelo's never been a shooter.
No, he has not.
And
I don't believe Posh Alexander is
Alexander's not a shooter either.
Right.
He's like I think he shot below like 27% from three last year.
Right.
Not great. This is your backcourt still, regardless. Like that's your starting backcourt. So it's an interesting yet clunky fit.
It's a weird choice for Curbelo.
Well, I think you just want to be closer to home,
right? But
and still be in a high major league. But
you can also, have the role you want.
Yeah,
He needs the ball
I'm thinking maybe
off the bench.
one of them has to make a jump in the direction of just giving the others more space. Like either
Yeah,
Carmelo has
make
to
a
be a better
defense
shooter,
respect you as a shooter.
yeah, or Alexander has to be a better shooter. Now, in terms of defense, I think they'll be fine on defense. Obviously, Posh Alexander can hide any mistakes from Carmelo or however that may unfold, but the offense is clunky. And then again, like Carmelo wasn't the perfect offensive player himself. Like at his peak, like he was one of the best facilitators in the country. Like super fast, gave you great dump downs, great feeds, probably fit some passes in some windows that many others couldn't. But he was also he was a turnover machine. And so my thing is, I'm afraid if the floor shrinks on them, the turnovers just increase. That's on the surface their biggest problem, but the talent's there. I think the room for either to make that jump to help the other is there. And so that's why I think they're still like a 40-ish level team.
I think this is the team that has the widest range between ceiling and floor.
Sure.
Because you look at what it could be. This team wants to play fast. They played the number one adjusted tempo in the country last year. Well, they can do that. Yeah. I mean, anyone who gets the rebound on this team can push it. I mean, we didn't even talk about David Jones, who further complicates the offensive spacing because he's like a 6'6" guy who does a lot of cool things and gets to the rim really well and is a really good athlete, good finisher, great rebounder for his size, doesn't shoot it very well. So but he's, again, another guy who can get a rebound, push. Andre Curbelo can get a rebound, push. Adewusu, same thing. Posh Alexander, same thing. So they're going to be fun when it's working. Like the fulfilled vision of this team, it's super fun, could be really, really good. But like you said, if you get cramped down in the half court, if other teams if teams can make you play against their set defenses, there's going to be either somebody has to make a jump as a shooter or somebody's going to have to eat some humble pie and just take a lesser role than they expected coming in, whether that's Curbelo, Jones, or one of the incumbent guys. I would suspect that that's more likely to be one of the guys who were plucked outside the program.
Yeah.
But to your point about Curbelo, I have all these concerns about the fit, but then I just watched Illinois-Purdue on Martin Luther King Day last year, the double overtime game. He was so good in that game. His first game back from the concussion, he was so freaking good. So it's a worthy gamble. But you're gambling with your job here, Mr. Anderson. This is a fascinating team.
And I think Curbelo, of all bets, is probably a bet I would make if I was a coach, like hovering around a hot seat. Like Curbelo, like at his peak, such a good player, such a fun, exciting, fast
and
player.
A fun dude to play with. Like at his peak, he's not trying to get his; he's trying to set you up. That's the kind of guy that dudes love to play with. It's just that if guys aren't guarding him, it's hard for him to create an advantage, right? And if someone's standing in the free throw line against you, you're not going to force a rotation, and then your best skill, which is his vision, kind of becomes negated. So he's got to work on that.
And frankly, I remember the splits like late season for when he was on and off the floor, and they were bad.
It was bad. Illinois was just better without him last year.
Yeah, man. So I for what it's worth, I hope things work out for him there.
I think this team, this is the team on their best night can beat Creighton. Because Creighton's going to play their style. They're going to run with them.
Yeah,
and
I'll take that.
There's a lot of good talent on this team.
But if there also is,
it could also be a 30-point loss.
Yeah, I'm about to say if there is any team that could probably shrink the floor, it might be Creighton.
And to that point, I think the two games Creighton beat them both times last year. One was by 3, one was by 23. So just to further illustrate that point. Now, by the way, we're saving Creighton for what's up.
I was just about to say, I realized Creighton is not.
We're saving Creighton
here
for the end. That's intentional because I don't want people to just go 5 minutes in and dip out. Not that I would accuse anyone of doing that, anyways. We're gonna get into the rough patches of the Big East. DePaul, 15-16 a year ago.
Wait, okay. Let me pose this question before we do this.
What's up?
Do you think the rough patches of the Big East are worse than the rough patches of the Big Ten?
That's a good question.
I don't think there's a team on here worse than Northwestern.
Georgetown's more talented, but no one in the Big Ten can say they lost 21 games in a row.
I don't think Georgetown this year is going to be the worst team in the Big East.
Okay.
I don't know if they will be.
Okay.
I think they. With all
I
the
just
talent,
think 21 losses in a row. I have 20 on here, but
they
it was
were
21.
horrible,
They're
yeah.
so bad.
Yeah.
So bad.
It was-
I just need Northwestern was a 500 team last year and may mess around and figure out a way to get close-ish to that again. There is no I think this year there's definitely more talent towards the bottom of the Big East for sure, but I don't know, some of these teams like DePaul has a chance to get pretty ugly. Georgetown, I know they got the influx of talent, but we'll get to Georgetown. I think that has a chance to still get ugly, even though the talent is better. Butler, I think, is going to be better. On the whole, the talent, again, better in the Big East. The Big Ten, the bottom of the Big Ten just has a better track record, I would say, than some of these teams. Again, minus Butler. So DePaul, 15-16 last year, 6-14 in the Big East. Two winning seasons in 16 years since joining the Big East. That's not good. You're a Chicago guy, Joel. Why is this program situated in the heart of one of the country's most talented cities, particularly for basketball, so bad? Why?
I think DePaul just has no appeal. We're long past the days of Corey Maggette and those guys, right? Like, there's no appeal to not only stay home as a Chicago guy, but I think the appeal for the Big East has just really started picking back up. But if you're going to go anywhere in the Big East, why the hell would you go to DePaul, right? And so I think you're seeing a lot of guys like Dede Ames from Kenwood is like a top 60 recruit, and he ends up at Kansas State. Like,
right.
There's just better recruiters out there, frankly, and DePaul just hasn't been in the limelight for a long time. Now, I will say, picking up Javon Freeman Liberty was a huge get for them. That's a Chicago guy, and he becomes the face of your team.
22 points per game, and 6-14 in the Big East. You need to win.
Yeah.
You need to win. You need to grab one of those guys and make him a star of a winning team.
Yeah.
When a program like in that sort of situation is dormant for so long, it's because they have no social currency in the city. No one cares about DePaul because they've been bad forever.
Yeah.
Kids want to go where the
Illinois
wins
is
are.
only 2 hours away.
There you go.
So
That's where DePaul's at. The key losses include Javon Freeman Liberty, who,
huge loss,
as we mentioned, 22 a game last year.
This is
Not
another
great.
team that lost their first option, and that's a
and their
big
second
drop
one,
off.
and their third one. David Jones, as we just mentioned, is a transfer to St. John's. Brandon Johnson is gone as well. Nick Ongenda, Jalen Terry, Javon Johnson, Philman Gebruit, Yorane are all back. This was a transfer laden roster anyway. Terry came from Oregon. Johnson came from Iowa State. I forget where Nate came from, but he is also a transfer. They did add, however, Zion.
They got some good additions, I think.
Yeah.
Like, if this was any other Big East team, I would be talking about them way better.
Zion Cruz, a 4-star freshman. Omaha Gibson, transfer from Oklahoma that Nebraska was looking at this offseason. I'm not a huge fan. Ahmad Bynum, 4-star freshman from Simeon. Caleb Murphy is a transfer from South Florida, former 4-star kid. KT Ramey, a junior college kid. And Earl Penn, a Long Island transfer who was getting 17 a game at Long Island. Interesting. Better, worse, or the same? We know they're not a contender.
Yeah, worse. But I will say, Zion Cruz, that's a guy like similar frame to Freeman Liberty. And frankly, I think that's a guy like, if you want to put hope in any recruit, like that's that guy to me. Like, real flashy, real crafty, good East Coast game to him. Got the frame to, make leaps and bounds in this conference. And frankly, I think if he stays there, like, that's their first option for years to come to me. But I just don't know.
If he stays there is like maybe the biggest if.
Yeah, I mean, it's very unpredictable. I'd probably bet on him not staying there.
Right.
Frankly,
this is where we're at as a college basketball existence. Like, this kid may well flash this year. DePaul may have some intriguing moments, but if the season goes the way we think it's going to go, even if they could exceed expectations. Like, my expectations for them are pretty low, near or at the bottom of this conference. They could exceed that and still not come close to sniffing the tournament. And if you're Zion Cruz, you watch that happen. You go through that. You see a bunch of other people leaving the program. And it's like,
that's probably a guy. You know what's crazy?
What am I doing?
I bet that he transferred somewhere else in the Big East.
Very
bet
possible.
On that. But they do have an interesting group of guys that they brought in terms of guards, right? Like Caleb Murphy was a guy who
Can't shoot, though. I don't like guys who can't shoot.
Sure, but he was the first option at USF. Like it's
sure.
interesting. And
Yeah.
as a recruit, like I remember when he came from Georgia, like I really liked him in high school. Like I think he used to play with BJ Boston.
Okay.
And then transferred the year
Now
after
with the Clippers.
that. So I liked him back then. Definitely gonna have to make a jump to be this team's first or second option. But frankly, I think I can't bet on who will be their first option. But I think he's
I'd
pretty.
guess Gibson from Oklahoma.
I don't know, man.
He's gonna shoot a lot.
Well,
I can tell you that.
Well, I remember when he was with Oklahoma, like on the team, because when I was covering Mizzou, that was their first round matchup in the tournament, and he was great in his role, but his role was like spot up, attack,
pull-up guy.
close
He was
out.
more of a pull-up guy last year. He was their leading scorer last year. He's not. Again, I'm not saying that's a good first option. I'm just telling you the guy he likes taking shots. And
Yeah,
I don't like.
just
Where
feel
else
like-
is it coming from?
I just feel like his game is more like secondary creator type.
Okay.
Like I think Caleb Murphy probably got the ball in his hands more. I don't know. Not saying he'll be a great first option. Maybe it's Zion Cruz. Maybe they let him get the keys early. I don't know.
Here's just a quick rundown of Caleb Murphy at USF. Again, AAC. This is a talent bump for him. Last year, 11 points per game. Okay, I'm intrigued. 41% from the field, 20% from three, didn't take a ton, and 54% from the free throw line, which is what you look for, hey, maybe he's not a good three-point shooter, but what if he could? Oh, he shoots 50% from the free throw line. I'm just underwhelmed. I'm underwhelmed by him. I'm underwhelmed a little bit by Gibson. I like the young guys. Hope they stay. Hope
Yeah.
they stay. It would make the conference.
Ahmad
This show
Bynum is
a
a
lot.
good recruit too.
Yeah,
from Simeon.
It would make this show a lot more interesting next year if those guys stay. We shall see.
Yeah.
Next up is Butler, 14-19 last year, 6-14 in the Big East a year ago. Key losses include Bo Hodges, Bryce Golden, Aaron Thompson, and Bryce Nizzi. Key returners include Chuck Harris, who was the leading scorer as a sophomore, 11 points per game. Miles Tate, former top 100 guy. Jaden Taylor started 20 games, and Seamus Lukosius, 21 minutes per game in 32 games last year. They added Eric Hunter Jr. from Purdue as a grad transfer.
Good pickup.
Manning Pates, another nice pickup, transfer from NC State who got hurt last year. Ali, shooter from Akron. Connor Turnbull's a freshman. Jalen Thomas was a Georgia State guy. He's the number 5 player in blocks in Georgia State history. Better, worse, or the same, Joel?
I think it feels easy for this team to, maybe not easy. It feels like this team should improve on 14-19, right? Like they should be at 500 this year. But I'm not super high on this team. I think Chuck Harris was. It's great that they brought Chuck Harris back, but losing Bo Hodges was huge. Bryce Golden, not the most dominant big, and they definitely took a different direction in the front court. But that's another guy with gravity beyond the arc, even if on low volume, just the threat alone spaces the floor. Bryce Enzi, good rebounder, just a solid front court guy. And then Aaron Thompson, I think, is like the leader in assists over there. He broke some record last year. I can't remember, but that's a great point guard. And so I think they managed to, fill the point guard spot in Eric Hunter. I think he'll maybe be expected to take on a bigger load.
Yeah, he's going to have to show
Purdue.
us something he didn't show at Purdue.
Yeah,
which
no
is possible
doubt.
because there was a lot of talent over there.
Yeah, but in terms of the front court, like they took an interesting direction. Turnbull, I know, is a guy that turned some heads in the St. Louis area. He's still a freshman though, and then Manny Bates, big time bully and rim protector and floor runner, who should definitely. I mean, he's no Bryce Golden. Like Bryce Golden was a stretch big. Like this is a dude that.
Yeah, he's more vertical gravity.
Yeah, really gonna pound some heads, and then Jalen Thomas, another guy who can man
Back
the
up
rim.
big, yeah.
So they're taking a different direction, which is cool, but it feels like less space, and I don't know where that leaves the team. They'll be a better defending team.
Right. I mean, last year their numbers, I think they were like 260th defending inside the 3-point arc. Now they got 2 legit rim protectors. That'll help. They were already, by the way, they were that bad defending inside the 3-point arc, and they were still like a borderline top 100 defense. So defense is the reason to be optimistic here. This is going to be a rock fight team, though.
Yeah,
Not going to be
no
the
doubt.
best watch.
And I think I think they're really excited. I mean, Chuck Harris, that's a lead guard for you to bring back. I think him and Eric Hunter side by side. Like, I think Eric Hunter low-key needs a guy like that next to him. He looked really good next to Ivy last year.
Right.
And Chuck Harris he's not as talented as Ivy, right? But that's
Right.
another guy you could play him side by side with who they'll make each other look good. Simon Lukosius is a guy I know people were super excited about. Just a really interesting game. And then Jaden Taylor was the freshman last year who people were also optimistic about in terms of making a jump this year. So they got an interesting core, and the ads are interesting, right? But I don't know if I see this team super far past 500. Like, I'm just not too high on them. But improving upon 14 to 19 feels inevitable for them.
I agree with that. When it comes to these rock fight teams, they're going to play good defense. They're going to struggle to score. A lot of it comes down to who wins the last 2 minutes and who you're going to give the ball to in the last 2 minutes. We'll see. It depends on who you're playing that night and who's got the hot hand on your team. Yeah. But Butler's going to be in a lot of those games.
Yeah.
Next up, we got Georgetown, and it was rough.
Yeah.
It was so rough last year. 6-25, 0-19. That's right, 0-19 in the Big East last year. Lost their last 21 games. If anyone besides Patrick Ewing was the coach of this team, probably gets fired midseason, but definitely gets fired at some point. Patrick Ewing is back, though. He still brings with him some recruiting juice. He did lose Amin Mohammed, who was their 5-star guy. They're by far their most promising player. Last year, Donald Carey transferred. Colin Holloway transferred as well. The key returners include Dante Harris, Ryan Mutombo. Yes, that Mutombo, Dikembe's kid, 7'2 sophomore. Additions, Primo Spears, Jay Heath. Primo Spears comes from Duquesne. Jay Heath, number 2 scorer at ASU last year, Arizona State. Brandon Murray, highly touted freshman last year at LSU.
He's good.
Double-digit scorer at LSU last year. Devin Anglin, number 82 guy in the 2022 class, according to ESPN, a 6'1 guard. Bryson Mazzone, South Carolina upstate transfer. He's a shooter. Wayne Bristol Jr., transfer from Howard. Interesting case there. The former MEAC freshman of the year.
RJ Cole came from Howard.
Yeah. This guy was the freshman of the year in 2019-20, I believe. Hasn't played since then. So not really sure what you're getting there, but interesting. 3-star Deontay Bates. Oh, we should mention also Wahab, the Maryland center, Qudus Wahab, who played at Maryland last year, played at Georgetown 2 years ago when Georgetown actually won the Big East tournament and made the NCAA tournament. If that doesn't happen, Patrick Ewing's probably not the coach here. So that's interesting. Also, Cock from UConn transferred. Rebounding guy, hit threes in small doses. And the last guy is Bradley Izawiro from LSU, who went to Oak Hill and did not play a ton last year. 4th best transfer class in the country per 247. Encouraging. Some young guys in the program now that are highly rated still. Encouraging. Yeah. Georgetown brand still has some weight. Patrick Ewing's name still has some weight. Is it going to work? Are they better? Probably. It can't be much worse. How much better?
Yeah. Well, I look around the roster, and I don't see a talent like Aminu Muhammad, right? Like, it's not there. But I will say, Jay Heath, good pickup. Brandon Murray, really good pickup. I liked him at LSU. I'd have to see who takes the reins as the guy they're running things through, because Brandon Murray, as good as he is, that's a guy you run stuff for, but maybe don't run your offense through. So again, like they picked up guys. And as much as I want to say, well, no, I will say they'll be better, because there's no way in hell a team loses every conference game 2 straight seasons.
It's an impressive feat to do it once.
Yeah. So twice is impossible. That's Wilt level greatness.
We need to start talking about like soccer style relegation. If you lose that kind of games or that level of games again, is bad.
Yeah, putting up numbers in the worst way. But so I think they'll be better. But yeah, we're probably still looking at a team at the bottom of the conference for sure.
My question is, what's a guy got to do to get fired?
Well, frankly, I think
what's the benchmark where it's like, all right, Patrick, if you win 13 games, are you back?
Look.
14 games?
I think this is the scenario.
4 Big East games, 2 Big East games?
I think it's a tough, cold Saturday in February. They lose to DePaul by 15 at home, and Pat Ewing is in the gym after hours, just sitting there looking at his feet, dwelling on what has been, and he says maybe it's time to part ways. I think that's the only way this thing happens is if the two sides mutually part ways. I don't think.
Well, there's no way they're going to announce that he gets fired, but like.
I don't think.
And he may well be like, "Wow, I'm embarrassing myself. Like, I need to get out of here.
Or
This
he
is
has
not
to step
for me."
down.
Yeah. That may well happen, but there's definitely no chance that press release is going to say anything but mutually agreed to part ways. That's for sure. I don't know what the standard is. I just think it's an interesting question to consider. Okay, you made it this far. Congratulations. You get to get to the point that you've been waiting for the entire time. We're talking about Creighton.
Yes, sir.
And I'm gonna try and do this straight from memory. Gone are Ryan Hawkins, Alex O'Connell, Rati Andronikashvili.
Yeah. Recent departure.
Yeah, recent departure. And Keyshawn Fazili. Fizel. Did I miss one? Am I missing one?
No, I don't think so.
I'm not? Okay, cool. New additions. Francisco Farabello, Ben Stoltzman. Schultzberg. Fred King. I'm missing one, right?
New additions? We
Farabello,
probably should have wrote this down, huh?
Fred King. I thought I could do this from the top of my head.
I thought I could too.
Stoltzman, Fred King. Is there another freshman, right? Farabello.
Oh yeah, Jason Green.
Yeah, Jason Green. Thank you, the Millard North kid. My goodness.
We're old.
No, that's the thing. We're not. It's really concerning.
Our minds are old.
We're not old. We got a lot going on right now. Okay, bear with us. And then of course, Baylor Shireman.
Yeah. From
South Dakota State, who you all know well. And then we got Trey Alexander back, Ryan Nemhard back, Arthur Kaluma, Ryan Kalkbrenner, Sharif Mitchell will be back from injury. It's a nice group.
Yeah.
It's a nice group. I think we, again...
additions, Fran Farabello, too.
Fran Farabello. I think I said him, but I appreciate you adding that anyways, in case I didn't. It's a good group, man. I think we agree they're better. I think we agree that they're the favorites in the Big East.
Yeah.
My question for you, Joel, is what is the X factor that Creighton needs to... Okay, Creighton needs to do this to be a national power, and then what could stop them from winning the Big East?
I think there's a few things.
Okay.
Stop them from winning the Big East? I think it takes... You know how Doctor Strange in a movie, how he's like, there's 1 in 1,500,000 realities.
So we got to open a bunch of portals for them to not win the Big East.
I think there's like... Yes, yeah.
Kyle Neptune's writing this on his bulletin board
right now. That's what I'm trying to say, yeah. So
he's saying people Neptune are counting Villanova out.
Maybe he got to recruit Doctor Strange's little brother or something. Get him on his staff or something. I don't know, but
Doctor Strange's dad named assistant to the head coach at Villanova.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, man, Creighton, in terms of what they got to do to really be the national power that they are projected to be, and maybe you could. I
mean, the light went out on us. That's fine. We don't need it right now. We're in the dark. The equipment still works.
Sure.
We're gonna record in the dark for this part.
Okay, cool. So. They need a few things to go right. I think you look at this lineup, and what makes Creighton so promising is that unlike these teams, they don't lose their first option, right? They don't lose their second or their third, and they probably add a guy who could be their first option in Baylor Shireman. Like, nobody has this level of continuity. I mean, you look around the country, and it's hard to find this level of continuity and promise and guys who make that jump from their freshman to sophomore year. I mean, people are really expecting big jumps out of the guys who were freshmen last year. And then Kalkbrenner is one of the better centerpieces to me in the country. And this is still a team, like I'm saying all this, but Kaluma could probably be their best player. I mean, to me, he's their most talented player. That's the guy that's going to get drafted highest to me. So with all that being said, for this thing to go right, for them to go as far as they want to, they need a voice first. They need a true leader. Is something the program's talked about a lot recently. They lost that in Hawkins. They talk about him a lot. Like when I talked to Mac from our notebook a few weeks ago, he mentioned Hawkins just on the defensive side, like being a real communicator and leader on that end. Granted, anybody could blow by him, right? Like we could probably give him a little 1-2, right? But he's calling out the help. He's calling out the sets. And he played so much college basketball. Like, it's hard to replace that. Like, dude was, like, 2-time player of the year in his former league, right? Yeah. So, like, it's hard to replace that level of experience and just recognizing sets, like, recognition on the floor.
Yeah, on defense, that falls on the big man, right? So Kalkbrenner's the natural slot in there. On
Yeah.
offense, it's the point guard, Ryan Nembhard. That would be, I think, a departure from both of those guys' natural personalities, right? I mean, at least for Kalkbrenner. I know Kalkbrenner better than Nembhard because that's the guy that I talked to last year. Nembhard was hurt while I was out there. Kalkbrenner's like not an extrovert. He's
Right.
not one of the louder guys out
No
there.
doubt.
So for him to be a quarterback of a defense will force him outside of his skin naturally.
Yeah. And I think, frankly, like, I don't know if they expect him to become the voice of this team. I don't know if he needs to become the voice of
He
this
doesn't
team.
need to be a rah-rah guy, but just calling out defenses and being that
Yeah.
sort of, like, he has the best view of the floor. It's naturally
I think
falls on the
he's
big
just
man
such a
list
great
moments.
anchor already anyway.
Yes.
That it's like, even if he's
Yeah,
quiet as a
he's
mouse.
definitely a lead by example guy.
Yeah, and I think if you're looking for a guy, because they do need that voice, right? Like you probably look at this team, and I mean, across the whole starting lineup, you're wondering like who's gonna be the
Right.
leading scorer, and who's gonna be the guy maybe to close games, right? And I think the interesting thing about them is it's gonna be a nightly thing. You're gonna see different guys, probably different looks. Not in terms of closing lineups. I think they're set on their closing lineup. Is what everybody in the world
Right,
thinks
it's the
it'll be.
starters.
But I think in terms of who's got the ball in their hands in those final moments, I think you could see that change nightly. And that's what poses the problem. Even though they have so many options on offense and it leads to no broken possessions, you need some decisiveness, right? You need some selfishness at times to really get that out the way and be like, okay, I'm going to be the one to put the shot up. And from what I'm understanding, I think the staff really likes Trey Alexander to be a voice and be a guy who, when his team needs a pickup, when his team needs some decisiveness, Trey Alexander might be that voice. And for what it's worth, you lose Alex Ocano, so you need a guy who you can point to the next, the other team's perimeter player and be like, pick him up. It seems like Trey Alexander is going to be that guy too.
Yeah. I think you have it right about the decisiveness point. The tired argument, or the narrative that's coming around Creighton, the question is, there's only one ball. How are they going to all shoot it with one ball? I think they have it backwards. It's like all these guys are going to be so extra cautious of not trying to step on each other that you might have, overpassing or indecisive. Like, I want to go here, but like, am I breaking off a play when I do this, or is someone else open? Like, there could be. It's more that I'm more worried about that, and that would to me would be if they don't win the conference. I think they're going to win the conference. It would be that it takes longer than we expect for that part of it to gel. They lose a couple of dumb conference games early on in the conference schedule. It ends up being really close, and maybe Villanova loses less of a step than we think. And it's not that they're that much better than Creighton. It's just that them and Creighton are both that much better than the Big East, and Creighton took a little bit longer to get there. I still think they're going to win the conference, but that would be the reasons why. And then that's
and to your point, I think if anybody's going to overpass to my understanding, that might be Shireman, because he is such a great facilitator.
And he's the new guy, and when you're the new guy on a team that had a great run last year and already has a good chemistry, you're going to be very conscious about, I don't want to mess this up.
No doubt. And when I talked to Mac, he was like, even in the summer sessions, he saw like Shireman's a great shooter, and there were some shots that he wished he would have pulled, but instead passed them off to get another guy a look, or whatever the case may be. Like it's definitely a problem that can happen. Now, I think they have good problems though. Still,
It's a great problem to have.
Yeah,
All these other teams we're talking about would die for these problems.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, like we talked about, guys having to back their lead big, like a Sanogo, like a Kalkbrenner. Like I think, to my understanding, and when I wrote that story, people kind of, I don't know if they twisted words, but they got geeked. They clinged on to a few words for sure. So what I wrote was, Ben Schultzberg feels like the most ready to contribute among the freshmen. Now, when you lay it out, Jason Green missed a big part of the summer. He's back now, and from what I understand, he looks good, but just a hard rotation to crack as a freshman, right? Fred King is a guy who, frankly, the staff likes as a long-term as an NBA guy, and I could see it. Like
anyone that big could be an NBA guy.
Yeah, and good point. And so Fred King would play this year. Like, I don't want people to be like, oh, you don't think he's gonna play? Well, I will say I thought because Kaluma was so good in the looks that they had him at the 5, I thought they would experiment with that more. Maybe that seems more like a matchup thing now, like a game by game thing.
I still think you'll see it.
Yeah, and you'll definitely see it.
Yeah.
I don't know how often, but I think you can expect Fred King to back Kalkbrenner like 10 to 15 minutes a night. I'd say somewhere in the middle there, probably like 12-ish minutes. And I think he'll do just fine. I think he's progressing at such a speed that the staff is confident in that. And granted, some of that is still going to be throwing him in the fire because, like I said, I don't think he's the most ready to contribute among the freshmen. Like, he's going to get tossed in the fire. They're lucky that their first games are, like, against, like, Drury and Holy Cross and whatnot, like, shit buyout games. But, like, their schedule gets tough. And so some of that is going to be him still getting tossed in the fire. But I think he'll, down the stretch, like, by March, you'll see a way better player to where he'll probably be a better contributor than Fizel was last year. I don't know. But he'll definitely play. I think Schultzberg is still going to find a way to play because if you ask me, I think Sharif Mitchell, there's no way he doesn't play.
Right.
Just based on his role the year before last and just what he brings back, defense.
Institutional knowledge is key.
Yeah. He's good in his role. Guy that you're really confident in playing 15, 20 minutes. I think he'll play closer to 20 this year. And then that leaves the rest of that guard core on the bench, right? Like Farabello, who's
shooter.
Yeah, shooter. You know what you get from him. Christophilus is in the mix somehow. Schultzberg.
There's a numbers crunch here. One of these guys is not going to be in the mix.
Yeah.
So,
and I think if I had to make a bet, I mean, it feels like Farabello, because I'm hearing that he can be that voice too, just off experience.
He's older than the rest of the guys.
You know what I mean? So, I don't know, man. Like, I think that's good enough to keep Farabello in the rotation, but at the same time, like, just pure skill to me, I think Schultzberg ends up higher by the end of the year. Like, that would be my bet. Like, I think Schultzberg is a really talented player. That's what I wanted people to get from that. I don't want people to think, oh, yeah, he's going to play right away. He's going to get humbled a lot of nights because they are just so deep in that backcourt. But for the future, he's nice, bro. And frankly, for right now, I think he'll find a way to crack that rotation.
All right, that's the Big East off-season retool. Real quick before we go, first of all, we didn't do the rap minute this week. I'll tell everyone, listen to the JID album. It's really good.
I haven't yet.
Okay, everyone should, including Joel. Real quick, Joel, give me a 30-second take on Donovan Mitchell to the Cavs.
Oh, it's fire. New 2K team. I think 3 firsts. I think it's 2 pick swaps. And then
Sexton,
Laurie.
Markkanen, and Ochai Agbaji.
Sexton felt like a sign and trade thing regardless,
Sexton
right?
Sexton is like off-brand Donovan Mitchell. Is what he is.
I think Laurie did a fine job last year in what they asked with the clunky 3 big thing at the time. Like, I think it worked pretty well, and he did his fair share within that. And then what they give it? Okai, Abaji. I feel bad for him. Like, it definitely sucks to go to Utah.
He's going to play a lot now.
Oh, no
he
doubt.
He probably would play a lot for Cavs too. They have no wings, and that's still true after this trade. But
yeah, it's I don't know. He still got to live in Utah, so I'm saying that. You know what? Let me stop. But for the Cavs, I mean, this is great. This is dope. I mean, Donovan has defense to back him. We were kind of talking about this before.
The backcourt defense is going to be real bad.
Man,
it just is.
I'm telling you, Okoro on the nail behind him is going to cover all that up. He's going to be right there.
How much is he going to play, though? He can't shoot.
Yeah, but you got 2 great shooters there. You got, hopefully, Mobley.
One's going to have the ball all the time.
Yeah.
Jared Allen can't shoot, obviously.
Yeah, but
That's not changing anytime soon. You can't play another non-shooter. This is the NBA, the court shrinks real quick,
I
man.
can see this lineup.
I think they're going to be good, but
sure.
you got more work to do. Got to get some wing depth in there. It's
but
a wings league.
It definitely raises the ceiling crazy.
Oh,
crazy
sure.
for them. I think
Great
they're like
trade.
a
I like
4th or 5th seed.
For sure.
Honestly.
You look at who wins titles. I mean, besides Steph is the exception, not the rule. Guys who win titles, Giannis, Kawhi Leonard, LeBron, Kevin Durant, big people. Big people win titles. The Cavs have built their team around 2 tiny guys.
Is Evan Mobley the next? Is he next?
Is he that kind of guy? That's the wild card here.
I think he makes a huge
That's what's fun
leap
to
this
talk
year.
about this.
Yeah.
Sure. And going forward, I mean, the kid's only, 19, 20. So he's the wild card in all this. But the Cavs have committed most of their resources to two tiny guys in a league where big guys win. Interesting. That'll do it for the podcast. I'm Jimmy. He's Joel. Stick with us at the World-Herald.